You tell the story so beautifully, but it's not, I can see as a producer, it must have been difficult to know where to start. How did you approach the topic and how did you find your characters?
Yeah, I know that. I mean, this film is actually really complex. There's a lot of layers. And then from during the time that I researched, I know a couple of things. One is that I wanted to tell the story through, cinema verite, really following the youngest generation of women who is trying to revive Nushu, but at the same time is navigating their own personal life and career life in the patriarchal society. And that's very much what I was struggling with. And to find a way through the lens of Nushu to show the audience where the bigger landscape of gender perceptions are in China, and where does that come from?
I watched this film with my 9-year-old daughter.
Oh,
And I think that if it were just a film about this ancient language, frankly, she would have been bored by it. But what you so brilliantly did was you drew these parallels to the status of women in China today. And that combination of what you did was absolutely breathtaking and riveting.
oh, thank you.
And I, getting back to the Nushu itself, many of these women, because they were so marginalized in society, they probably didn't even know how to read and write, yet they created this language that only they knew how to interpret. Is that fair to say?
Yep, absolutely. And I think that, back then, Nushu was their survival tools, basically. I mean, it means that life or death for these women. And because they have this outlet, it allowed them to not only survive, but also thrive. And the way that we experience today with the rollback on women's rights globally, and just me feeling so personally inspired by what these women created, because I mean, it's not just that they have this tool for survival, but also it takes so much bravery and courage for them just to talk about their sufferings. And like looking at it today, I felt like it's exactly the same. Like the more that we become strong on the outside as women, the more we actually suppress on the inside of the things that we're dealing with and struggle with. And that's what I found the brilliance of wisdom, that Nushu can give us even today.
The contemporary stories in the film, as told through Sima and Hujin, I think are remarkably beautiful. It's especially so when it's offset against the increasing commercialization. You have several instances in the film where you have these men telling these women how Nushu should be used, exploited, commercialized, profited from. Talk a little bit about how Nushu is, the tension that Nushu is kind of currently existing in.
I think that China went through a huge societal changes, and then I grew up in a time that's more communist, where gender equality was very much pushed, and then like there's no gender income gap. And it was the time that I went back to China in 2010 that did I see that the country's become so capitalistic in a way that it also plays a role of how capitalism plays a role in gender inequality. Some of the men may not come up so flattering, but in a way, I'm also trying to show that how they're also trapped in their way of thinking about their perceptions and exceptions. We actually, this film, I really am hoping to finding a way to also connect to men so that we can have a better understanding of where our gap is and how do we, really align with that gap of understanding of our gender perceptions towards each other.
Having worked on stories in China, I think that the challenge that we always face is how do we take these Chinese stories with its historical and political complications and be able to, put together something that's both appropriate for the domestic audience and the international audience. So can you share a little bit about how you were able to do that?
I think I first moved back to China in 2010. And that was the time I started to really realize that we really have no resources. We have nothing. We have not even like a distribution market, like filmmakers has nothing to rely on. So a lot of times that they have to rely on, resources from, Western countries. And in a way, subtly, I start to see that people sometimes have to feed into the Western narrative in order to make their film be seen, because I mean, you can be seen in China anyways. And I think that's like, it's sad in a way, but also I find it also a bit problematic. And so I actually, I know stubbornly, I think not many people believe that, but to me, it's really important that I find a way that my story and my perspective need to be embraced and seen in China as well. Because if my community doesn't hold me accountable, I can just say whatever I want, and it may not even be true. So I want that to hold myself accountable. And that from that on, I also stubbornly believe that, the film that I want to tell need to target on both markets, that it need to be seen in China. It should also be embraced in Western world. And that's like really, really hard. I think the most challenging thing is to protect our subjects, and then dealing with subjects in China is a whole different game than dealing with subjects out of China, because they could lose their job, they could lose their freedom, they could lose so many things. Their risk is so much higher. So how do we protect them very much affects the way that I tell the story, what kind of approach that I tell the story. So that, I mean, throughout the years of me producing for many Chinese films, that, like, it's not by choice, but at the end of the day, it's sort of like we chose to tell a subtle and nuanced ways, so it's not like, like there's a lot of things that I didn't, include in a film of what my characters, scenes are, very much because of that. And also I think that defines my way of storytelling, that how do I embed a radical perspective, a nuanced and subtle way of storytelling, but in a way that in the end, like after so many years, I realized it's actually more powerful, and I embrace that as part of me now.
Well, Violet, I want to congratulate you on making this this extraordinary film. I wish you so much success. And for those who are watching, I really I can't encourage you more strongly, especially if you're a woman and you have daughters, to see this film, because again, it's something that I am sure will stay with you. And during this time, I can't think of anything that could become a better sort of driver and mantra for these times, even though this language was created and expressed hundreds of years ago. So please go out and see it and support Hidden Letters.
Thank you so much, Lisa.